On this episode of Locked On Canadiens, will the power play be good this year?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to episode 1142 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing on YouTube and wherever you subscribe to podcasts. Doing so supports the show and ensures you don't miss an episode, which is incredibly important as we shift back into our 5-episode-a-week schedule. So hang with us every day. We'll have a new episode for you. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I am Ian Boisvert, also known as @MaybeIt'sIan, and I am joined by the incomparable Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. Laura, how are we doing today?
We're excited. We're almost at training camp. We're gonna get into like the nitty gritty of training camp tomorrow. But things are looking up. Hockey's almost back. The weather's still good though, so like we have absolutely no reason to complain. Yet.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we're turning we're going to use today, we're going to turn a mailbag segment or mailbag question into a full-blown episode because we love the question so much. The question came in from Steve Easter. They wanted us to predict some good, bad, and ugly things to happen to the Canadiens this year. So that's really what we're going to jump into. We'll start with the good. Laura, what's your first thought when you think of something you're predicting to be good this year for the Montreal Canadiens?
I think Patrik Laine will find a new energy. I don't know if he'll get to a 40-goal scoring pace, but I think we're going to see a lot of goals from him. We're going to see it's going to be one of those things where a player comes to the Canadiens and we're like, how did we ever live without this guy? Like I'm thinking maybe not as dramatic as Ilya Kovalchuk for those, 20 games or whatever it was. But somebody shows up and it's like their game is at such a high caliber that it just makes everyone excited about every game, like the possibility of every game. Again, I'm not sure if he's going to score 40 goals, but for me, a good is Patrik Laine bringing some offense, bringing some excitement, and elevating everyone else's game along with him.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned, a player that shows up and we kind of don't know how we lived without them. That kind of gives big Alex Kovalev vibes, doesn't it? Like that was the sort of player that he was when he got here. And he was immediately the most talented forward on the team when he got here and was throughout his time in Montreal. Very similar personalities, too, between the two players. Like, I could see that being a pretty fun analog for the Patrik Laine experience in Montreal.
I feel like Patrik Laine, like the one slight difference is he takes himself a little less seriously than Kovalev did.
Yeah.
Like, he's serious about his job, but he's not that serious about himself. So I feel like there could be like a little bit more lightness, but I do predict that it's going to be that kind of reception in Montreal and that kind of effect on the team.
Yeah, I think that actually leads nicely into one of the things that I have listed as a good for this year for the Montreal Canadiens. And I think the power play is going to be good. Last year, they were below league average, which was about 20%. They came in at about 17%. They have too many weapons now to be bad. Like it's the fact of it is like it's time for that unit to start to produce. They'll have Cole Caulfield, they'll have Patrik Laine, they'll have Nick Suzuki, they'll have a newfound confidence in Juraj Slafkovsky, they'll have Mike Matheson doing Mike Matheson things, and potentially at some point Lane Hudson doing Lane Hudson things on that power play. And we haven't even brought in like Kirby Dach, who we're hoping to get 82 games of this year. Where does he fit into those plans? I think that a top half of the league power play is entirely within the realm of possibility for the Montreal Canadiens. So top 16. Last year, to get into that threshold, you needed a 21.5% power play in order to get in. I think that that's well within the realm of outcomes for the Montreal Canadiens power play. Am I way off base with that?
I don't think you're crazy. Like I would have said, like if you said they're going to come fourth in the league, I would be like, Ian, like that's a little too optimistic. Because there were two things wrong with the power play: not enough weapons and strategy. Right. So now they've got the weapons. It's up to the Canadiens, the coaching staff, the players to kind of figure out how not to get smothered or stifled. I would say stifled is a little better word for the power play situation, but it's up to them, right? So like if you're saying they're going to go from like lower half, like and at times we felt it was hopeless. to at least giving us hope to see progress, top half. I would say like looking like maybe top 12, like that's a possibility here, because you got to also remember that other teams are going to fall off and drop off. So I don't think you're crazy. I don't think you're off base. I think, Patrick Laine gives them an option. I think a healthy Kirby Dach gives them another option. So now you've got your weapons. You've got people that can think as well, like that you've got creativity. You just kind of have to figure out the strategy, because people keep figuring out this power play and smothering it.
Yeah. No, I think that that's all, perfectly rational thinking. At first I had written down top 10, and then I went, nah, it doesn't feel right. Even that's a little too pie in the sky for this
I mean, you never
exercise.
know.
Sure.
We're like we just talked about Kovalev. Remember, like that shot up that power play percentage with him on the Canadiens. I just want to be a little bit realistic.
Sure. And we learned at the golf tournament that Marty St. Louis is taking the power play on his own. With the departure of Alex Burrows, we knew that they kind of split that responsibility. They both worked on it. Now it's just Marty.
Yeah.
So, this power play's successes and failures will ride on the head coach. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out this year. You got another one for us in the good category?
The good category is Juraj Slafkovsky. After having a breakout year, I don't think he's going to have a massive slump or anything. I do think it's going to even out. Like, I think, I don't think he's hit his stride yet. I think he's going to get there, but I don't think it's going to be this year. But I do believe that you're going to see at least an equal, if not better, performance from him this year. I don't want to see it as a sophomore slump, because technically it's not his sophomore year, but
Right.
you know the narrative I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that we're going to see a lot more goals from Cole Caulfield this year than we did last year.
Yeah, I think that is, both of those are really salient points. Like Juraj Slafkovsky taking another step forward would be, just another dose of really good news and confidence in that pick. Not that at this point there's any sort of confidence questions to be had, but it's still important that the Canadiens, continue to get value out of the fact that they had a number 1 overall pick in not too recent history. Cole Caulfield thing, last season he was recovering from that shoulder. We know that the recovery timeline for that, while he was able to play, the full recovery timeline is wider than that. So I think if he's able to come in and get 30, maybe touch 40 goals, I think it goes a long way in saying if that were to happen, we're looking back on the season going, hey, the power play probably clicked pretty well.
Yeah.
And they scored more at 5-on-5. And Nick Suzuki gets over the point per game pace if Cole Caulfield and Juraj Slafkovsky are able to take steps forward.
And I think for me, my big thing is Nick Suzuki is like, he was just shy. All of last year, he was on pace. He started out okay. It didn't work out. I think today it works out. I think this year, when I say today, I think this year it works out. Like, that to me is, I'm not going to put money on it, but I am pretty confident in Nick Suzuki's abilities. Everything needs to work out. He needs to stay healthy. His line mates need to, achieve some measure of their potential. But I think this year, like, I've bookmarked a Senators fan naysayer. I would really like to go and rub it in their face this year. So Nick Suzuki, please don't let me down.
Yeah, no, I don't think you will. The last one that I have for good, and I'll get through this one pretty quickly here, is the goaltending. I really think we're going to get some good goaltending out of Montembeault and Primeau. I think they push each other to be better. Last year, the team save percentage was basically average. I think it was 1/1000th of a point below average.
Yeah.
I think that, 905 goaltending across the team isn't out of the realm of possibilities for them. Primeau came in at like a 910, and Montembeault played a little bit less than that, or lower than that, but he played way more. I think that, now that the 3-headed goalie monster is behind them, these guys can settle in as a 1A, 1B sort of situation. And I'm really bullish on this tandem in net. I really like their chances of having a positive impact on the Montreal Canadiens.
So I don't agree with you, but I'm not putting them in the bad column. I'm just putting this in the neutral column, in that I think there's going to be ups and downs still, particularly with Cayden Primeau. So I feel like, Samuel Montembeault is going to be shouldering a little bit more of the load than ordinarily we would have planned for him to. But Cayden Primeau might be able to prove me wrong. He was fantastic at every level but the NHL. And for me, like, I'm going to reserve judgment until, because as we talked about when we established that we have league average goaltending here in Montreal, is that Cayden Primeau's highs are really high and his lows are really low. So I would like a little bit of consistency from him. And until I see that, I'm reserving the good prediction for goaltending.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's sort of, that conversation we had earlier this summer about that, where, Cayden Primeau is either an incredible goalie or unplayable. Yeah. I'm going to take my prediction on the upside. I really think that he establishes himself this year, but equally, I would not be surprised if it's the opposite, right? If it's the inverse. So completely agree with the range of outcomes for Primeau there. All right, that's enough good. Unfortunately, the rest of the show, we're going to spend a little time getting pessimistic about the Montreal Canadiens, and we're going to get into all that in just a second. I love being in the middle of the action, whether that's taking in a concert or enjoying a night at the ballpark. It's just more fun being there. I know I've mentioned this before, but last summer I got to see Shohei Ohtani up close and personal, and it's something I'll never forget. The place where you can go to get to the events that you want to see is Gametime. We're big fans of Gametime here, thanks to their all-in pricing. This is a setting in the app that you can toggle on, so Gametime tells you exactly how much you'll be paying to get in. No hidden fees, plus with their seat views, you know what kind of action you'll be able to see. And with their lowest price guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal for your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's Gametime. All right, we are back with Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, Laura, it's glass half empty time. Where are we headed here with our bad section of the good, bad, and ugly?
Okay, so can I make a prediction involving the same player, one for bad and one for ugly?
Sure. Okay. We make the rules here.
So right now we're talking about bad, and the bad is the Canadiens are not going to be able to find a trading partner for Josh Anderson.
Mm-hmm. He's in my thing. Ugly. I'll spoil that.
Yeah,
now.
I've got some ugly too. So.
Yeah, the only time the words Josh Anderson and ugly will ever be associated with one another.
I know. Because otherwise he's a very beautiful man. Let's get that off the let's get that on the record. We love Josh. It's just that right now we don't love the way he plays.
Correct. Yeah.
So what about you?
Yeah, with bad, I want to start with our rentals. The rentals that we'll have to give away at the end of the year. I think there's a real reality here where Armia falls back down to earth, and Christian Dvorak continues to be sort of the middling, not very attractive player for teams to go out and trade for. And we all know that the Canadiens only have one salary retention spot left. So they can only retain on one of them. Both of those contracts are kind of bad. I think that there's a reality that both those players become particularly unattractive trade options. And the Canadiens kind of get stuck in between keeping them and pushing for a playoff spot just to miss out, or trading them for a value that they don't love. Because they're kind of trying to do both. This is kind of an awkward season in that respect, right? So
absolutely,
I think that there's a reality where those guys, their returns disappoint. I don't think there's a chance that David Savard disappoints, because whether or not if he stays, awesome. I really like David Savard on this Canadiens team. If they trade him, someone's going to throw a very high value asset at the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, and I think I probably should have used that in my good prediction. The one bad thing, though, is I do feel that David Savard is overworked for not just his skill set, but also his age. And I do love him, and I do understand the value of having him on this team. I also completely understand that the team wants him around those younger players, particularly now you've got all these defensemen knocking on the door. It's really going to help, their development. And I like David Savard as a person, as a player. Like, everything I learn about him is just hilarious. Like, the other day, the Canadiens posted that meme where they show you the picture of you when you were young, and they were autographing them. And David Savard made me laugh so loud that I had to send it to the group chat, even though there was a 110% chance the group chat had already seen it. I just loved it so much. Like, there's so much I love about David Savard, but for me, the bad thing is I do think that they're going to overwork him, and I
Yeah.
worry a little bit because I don't want him to get injured, and I want him to be able to play and available to a team that's going to want him on the deadline, because also I would like for him to play meaningful hockey.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's why teams acquire him, is because when he does play meaningful hockey, he's a valuable player.
Yeah.
So yeah, I completely agreed. We can't. I would hate to see him go down like he did last year, where the play was heroic, to put it bluntly. When he was, I think it was against Buffalo, he blocked a shot, broke his wrist, blocked another one, his skate blade popped off. He's got basically oil leaking all over the ice. Like, that's the kind of play that I'll remember David Savard for. Do you have another in the bad category?
I don't really, because I wanted to talk a little bit about my worry about injuries, but I've decided that, after 3 years of almost the worst injury luck in the league, if not the worst at some points, I've decided that this year I'm going to not be optimistic, but I'm going to be neutral on that front.
That's a good idea. We can't control it. A lot of the injuries are freak injuries. They're not predictable. Um, I don't want to, and we certainly don't want to make a prediction that players are going to get injured, because that's an evil we don't want to put out into this world. So I agree with you on that front. My last bad entry would be that we are going to white knuckle it through the entire season watching Demidov play in the KHL.
Yeah.
We are going to freak out all year about his deployment, even though none of us know anything about the KHL. and
who does? Who
that?
does is Hattie Kalakish. So you should be checking out Locked On
Yes.
NHL prospects. We love those guys. We're going to have them on soon.
Yeah. I just, he's probably like 4 or 5 games into his first season with SK St. Petersburg. And it's, it's just it's over, we're so back meme. Like, that's just sort of how this is going to play out for the entire season, where he shows up on a highlight and we're so back. He gets benched in the third period while they're losing. It's so over. Like, that's what we're in for this year. And I don't know how much of this, one, I can take. I'm already losing my mind about it. And two, how much this fan base can take of that. Like, I think the Canadiens will show restraint. I don't think they're trying to get him over here any faster. But, the fans certainly think he should be here. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. But I don't know where you stand on that.
Well, I'm on the record as saying that he should be brought over next year, not this year. But they shouldn't wait too long. But they should just let everything play out with the KHL this year. I do think, though, that I had a segment idea, though, Ian, is that every week we should do are we at the it's over?
Yeah.
It's so over? Or are we at the we're so back stage in our hockey feelings? Let's workshop that off screen and ask the listeners what they think. But I think we should have a weekly vibe check.
Yeah. I think the vibe economy with Ivan Demidov is going to be very important to Canadiens fans this year. I think that the one thing saving them in this respect is that it's not like the year where we watched Lane Hutson highlights, in that I think there will actually be good things to cheer for on the NHL team this year.
Yeah.
Like, in the past, we were watching all those guys because it was like, it
belonging to Lane Hutson so hard.
Right.
Poor guy.
It was that, or like, I can watch Josh Anderson on the fourth line. Like, okay, that's a pretty easy choice for me. I'm just going to go watch Lane Hutson highlights for the next hour. But yeah, I think that that's sort of one of the underlying narratives from this year that I'm just really not looking forward to. We got the player we all wanted. He's in a great situation at SKA. I don't think we are making enough of that. He's playing with Evgeny Kuznetsov. Like, he's in a good spot. He's not playing with randoms on Kudlin Red Star. Like, he's playing on the best KHL team. This is very, very good for him.
Yeah, with the best available players to him in the KHL.
Right. Yeah, SK St. Petersburg buys the best team money can buy every year, or at least they try to. He's in a fantastic situation. We kind of can't get caught up in the day-to-day minutia there. We have to we can't miss the forest for the trees. And every time he gets benched for more than 2 shifts, we all slam the panic button. It's just not going to be, one, helpful in any meaningful way, or two, rational. It doesn't like there's more to developing a hockey player than just hoping he doesn't get benched. Like that's not, we can't control any of that. All right, we are headed deeper into the pit of despair with our ugly predictions. We're going to find things that could be pretty rotten about the 24-25 Canadiens, and we are going to get into all of that in just a moment. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, we are back. It's time to get ugly. Before we do that, I wanted to remind folks, Wednesday is the last day for us to accept our mailbag questions, so get them in. LO_Canadiens on Twitter, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Send us in your questions. We will get to them on the Friday episode of the show. All right, Laura, where do you want us to start here with ugly?
Josh Anderson. Again, not an ugly person, not an ugly man. I think that he's not going to rebound. And for me, that's worse than like the fact that the Canadiens aren't going to be able to trade him. Because for him, it's probably at a point, it was at a point last season where he'd lost all his confidence. And, you know, some players have that situation. They just spiral and nothing they do seems right. I really hope I'm wrong because I'm on the record. Like if anyone's listened to the podcast, like from the beginning, you know, as soon as the Canadiens got Josh Anderson, started appreciating him. And then, you know, that cup run was phenomenal. Like it really solidified my love for him. And it's just sad that this is the way it's gone. But that's my ugly prediction because I really want this for him. I really want improvement. I want him to be a player that other teams want again. And I want him to be able to just find some aspect of his game that fits in with this team.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, you know, in thinking of this segment, he's the first thing that came to mind because not only is the current version of the player something I would consider in the ugly category, I feel like with a couple bad practices and a couple bad preseason games, this could get really ugly really fast. We've been saying that there's, you know, I think that there's a significant chance that they waive him at the start of the season, a la Yoel Armia, like they did last year. That's not to say they're trying to have someone claim him on waivers because I don't know if you guys know this, but Josh Anderson gets paid a lot of money. No one's going to claim him on waivers. So, you know, it'll be something for him to go find his game. It's not meant to be a punishment, but the Canadiens are above the salary cap right now. They're $2 million over, and sending him down to Laval will give them, I think, what is it, like a 1.1 million in buried money. So that gets them halfway to being under the salary cap while still having Carey Price on the active roster. I think Ken Hughes is going to have to be ruthless if Josh Anderson comes into camp this year and it's more of the same. And that hurts, right? Because like you said, he scored a game-winning overtime goal in the Stanley Cup final for the Montreal Canadiens. Right? Like we forget that. It was the only game in that final that they won. And I think he scored the only 2 goals for the Canadiens. He scored the first one, and I think he scored the winner.
Yeah.
That game against Vegas.
The way he played against Winnipeg, the way he played against Vegas, like he really brought a lot of value in that series, in that cup run.
Yeah. No, it's I do not cheer for this as a fan because it's hard to watch a guy go through this. It was really difficult to see Yoel Armia go through it, which is why it was so awesome to see him play his way out of it because he did. He put his head down and he played his way out of it. It is possible. I believe it's possible for Josh Anderson. I just don't know. I just don't know that it's the most likely outcome for him at this point, unfortunately.
I have a really ugly prediction. It's like extremely hideous. Like I'm gonna put it out there. I don't want letters, listeners. I think the good thing is I feel like Boston is gonna drop out of a playoff spot. The ugly prediction is that Ottawa is gonna take its place.
No, why would you say that? Remember when they're called the sickos? That was a really sick thing for you to think out loud. That hurt a lot.
I know. I just don't unsubscribe. I'll never say it again, guys. I'm really sorry. And Ian should not be held responsible for that prediction that I made. So
yeah, I mean,
it's
they
the ugliest thing I could possibly say on the show.
For sure. And again, I don't think that that's an insane thought. They got the goalie they wanted.
Right.
You know, Brady Tkachuk is just going to angry his way in. You know, if he's going to take that team kicking and screaming into the playoffs if he can.
Yeah.
As gross as it is, and as much as I don't want to think about it, it's something that maybe we should start preparing ourselves for because it could happen.
Yeah, like this is what I'm doing, everybody. I'm preparing you emotionally for this because when it does happen, it's going to be so ugly. It's going to feel so awful, especially in Montreal, especially if they can't win a game against them this season. That's going to make me crazy. But it's just we should emotionally prepare ourselves because when the Boston Bruins won the Stanley Cup in 2011, we were not prepared. And that shock, it took us a whole summer to like not be depressed about it. So, you know, let's get ready. I'm not saying they're going to win a round or anything. I'm just saying that they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah. And, you know, when we get all of these predictions wrong, you can thank us for when they miss the playoffs. So, you know, there's a second edge to that story. Yeah, for sure. The last ugly I have is I think the penalty kill is going to be bad again.
That was one of my uglies too.
Yeah, I think that, you know, they were below team league average last year. They're bringing back most of the same personnel, if not all of the same personnel. I think it's likely to stay the same or regress, which, you know, is bad news for this team because special teams are one of the biggest aspects of what's killing them. Their 5-on-5 play is generally okay. They're not blowing the doors off, but they can tread water or just above it at 5-on-5. The power play killed them last year, and the penalty kill killed them last year. You know, so like I just don't know that they did enough there to get better.
Yeah. So where I stand on this is like you're talking about the 5-on-5. Like for me, it's like you take that 5-on-5 game and you add a little bit of talent to it. So they've done that in the form of Patrick Laine. And then you improve the special teams a little bit. But my reason for the power play, the penalty kill being ugly is going to be there's going to be a lot of inconsistency on this defense just based on who's playing on it, right? Like you've got, like I said it on our round table that's going to be on this channel at some point. You're going to be able to listen to the round table with all the other division losers of the Atlantic Division. I said that like there's one roster spot on the defense and 1.5, right? 7th is not like, you know, certain who it's going to be. You've got 1.5 roster spots. You've got 4 guys knocking on that door. And it just by nature of the potential for injury, like somebody's going to get injured. So a second one of those 4 is going to get called up, right? Like they're going to rotate that 7th defense. Like, you know, Justin Barron has to do something to like get in there. There's so much going on. So like, I feel like that inconsistency is going to kill them in terms of the penalty kill. Cause a lot of these players, like, I don't think they're going to be testing Lane Hudson on the penalty kill. No, I don't think that's a thing, right? Like, but like a guy like, you know, like Logan Meyer or Jaden Struble, like the expectation, and we're not going to talk about Reinbacher because we're assuming they're not calling him up, but somebody like that, right? Like those guys are going to get penalty kill minutes just so that they can see and test what they've got. And I don't see their lack of strategy, their lack of like their defensive identity is not that great. They're positionally, they're all over the place as an institution. The Montreal Canadiens are positionally all over the place on defense. So when you inject that uncertainty and the guys jostling for the same spots and like everybody like playing too hard because they want to stay up and all of that, like it's going to be ugly. And it's literally like an ugly prediction, right? So that's where I'm at. But like in terms of the 5-on-5 play, I don't expect too much of a step back. So like let's end the show on a positive note, even though we're talking about ugly. Like I don't expect too much of a step back. And in fact, I do expect a little bit more, a little bit of improvement, especially in the underlying numbers, just based on the fact that they've improved their offense dramatically.
Yeah, totally agreed. We do have one last ugly thing, and that's me for forgetting the trivia last episode. So I will answer the trivia question from last time and provide you with a new one. As a reminder, the question last time was: people often credit the Montreal Canadiens and the Edmonton Oilers for playing the first outdoor NHL game in 2003 at the first Heritage Classic, but that is untrue. Where was the first outdoor game played in the NHL prior to that Heritage Classic? Do you have an answer for this, Laura?
I do not have an answer for this, and I didn't look it up. Like I didn't want to cheat. I thought it might come to me by the time we discussed it, and no, it has not come to me.
So there's two that I'm disqualifying from this answer, and they were games that I believe the Detroit Red Wings and Boston Bruins played against legitimate prison inmates. They went to prisons and played outdoor games against prisoners. I'm not counting those for obvious reasons. The answer that I'm going with is Las Vegas on September 27th, 1991. There was a preseason game between the Rangers and Kings played in the parking lot of Caesars Palace Hotel and Casino. The Kings won 5-2. Rangers goals were scored by Tony Amonte and Doug Waite, and the Kings got goals from Tony Granato, Brian Benning, Sylvain Couturier, Yari Curry, and Wayne Gretzky. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy site if you want to go take a look at it. It's fun. They literally played a hockey game in a parking lot. They put stands up around it. It was crazy.
That's so fun though, and it's like it's those two teams of all teams, right?
Yeah. I mean, and it was the early '90s. Yeah, the early '90s Rangers and Kings. Like that's a really good matchup. If they got to see Wayne Gretzky play in a parking lot, that's pretty fun. All right, we'll get you to our next trivia question. On November 18th, 2002, Saku Koivu scored his first career hat trick against the Pittsburgh Penguins. His third goal came on a 5-on-3 power play. Name one of the players in the penalty box for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I promise you, there's a Canadiens angle to this.
Can you repeat the question just before we go?
Yeah. So. On November 18th, 2002, Saku Koivu scored his first career hat trick against the Pittsburgh Penguins. His third goal came on a 5-on-3 power play. Name one of the Pittsburgh Penguins that was in the penalty box.
I love it.
Yeah. So good luck with that. Yeah. Right before we go, I do want to say I wanted to wish Chris Weidman a happy retirement. He retires from the NHL officially after 291 games. He played 110 of those in Montreal and some pretty terrible Montreal Canadiens teams, and he always generally had a pretty good attitude. So congrats on the career. Glad you were able to make the decision to hang it up. All right, that's going to do it for us on this one. Thanks for listening, and make sure that you subscribe anywhere that you listen to podcasts. We're back to 5 a week, so you don't want to miss an episode there. For your second listen, head on over to Locked On NHL to see what else is going on around the league. You can follow the show on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens or email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Remember to get your mailbag questions in. We're taking the mailbag on Wednesday. It'll still be out on Friday on its normal day. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.